I'm caffeine free. I'm here today to talk about why I quit and why you need to quit now. Hey there, I'm Jennifer. Ever feel like caffeine has a hold on you? Like you need that morning coffee, tea, or energy drink just to feel like you're yourself? I was right there with you. If you are someone that's saying to yourself, I really want to stop drinking caffeine and having caffeine in my life, but I just need the will to do it, then you're in the right place here today. So every day I'd wake up and get right to work, get right to business. And it always was with maybe a few cups of coffee or a few cups of tea. And I felt like I could rule the world, at least for a few hours anyway, until all of that caffeine hit came off and I just basically was crashing out. When you first start drinking coffee or drinking any caffeinated beverage, you feel like everything is better. You feel happier, you feel like you are totally crushing it, don't you? And you feel like you're getting so much work done and you feel unstoppable. I felt that way for a long, long time until it turned really into a dark direction for me. I've been on this mission, this journey of improving my performance. And I've made so many meaningful changes in my life, yet I still felt terrible. I still felt tired. I was slow. I'm anxious. I'm panicky. I had digestive issues and I was totally stressed out. I couldn't sleep through the night anymore. And I started to develop this anxiety that I never ever had. I remember driving home from the airport one day and having to pull over on the side of the road because I was having a massive panic attack. And it just came from out of nowhere. I can't even describe it. Every day I would feel like my heart was just pounding so hard, pounding in my chest. And sometimes I didn't know where to put myself. I was like a little kid with ants in their pants or ADHD that couldn't relieve the feeling, even with really difficult and strenuous workouts at the gym. I felt like this all of the time. And I suffered from increased inflammation. And although I'm on a very low carb diet and mostly a carnivore diet, my blood sugar felt like it was high. And my allergies were unbearable sometimes. I didn't feel strong even in my workouts. And I started to lack enjoyment in the things that I always loved, and started to question if I was becoming depressed. I couldn't figure out why. I live a great life. I have great people in my life. I have a great career, a great husband, a great family. And so how could I feel so bad? Where is my energy anymore? Is it a hormone thing? I'm not that old. What's been happening to me? To my joy, to my energy, to my just overall mental well-being? I was just like, please make this stop. So in my quest for improving my physical health for years, I tried to quit caffeine because I just never got the feeling that it was good for me. And I was slowly stepping down from coffee to green tea because doctors say it has all of these antioxidants and green tea is calming since it has that compound theanine. Doctors also say that coffee and tea are really healthy because they have antioxidants. I'm here today to tell you it's total bullshit. And I don't care what antioxidants are in coffee or in tea, the caffeine addiction is not worth it. Lower caffeine didn't matter to me. Caffeine is caffeine. It works the same way whether it's high or low. And the more I drank, the more I needed to drink. The more I needed to have more for focus and for energy. And then I would totally crash out and it would start all over again. Day after day, my day was the same. And I had to literally schedule my life around my caffeine highs. And I never felt any better drinking green tea than drinking coffee. I really didn't. So maybe some of you have taken that step and you do feel better, but it didn't work for me. It took a long time and a lot of research to finally realize that caffeine was the thing that was destroying me. in all ways. I just thought, this probably can't be good for me, drinking coffee and drinking caffeine, but caffeine really has some bad stuff going on with it. Caffeine is caffeine, and it does a lot of damage, and it's one of the most addictive substances in our daily lives. And after research and hearing from people who have had a very similar experience to mine, I just went cold turkey. It was really hard, but it changed everything. When I say everything, I mean freaking everything. Everything is just better. I'm not here to tell you about a tactic or a step-by-step program, because that's not what I did. There was none of that. I just freaking quit. I just picked a day and I decided that was it. And really, it was when I hit rock bottom and I felt like I was at my wit's end. It's very similar to what people go through when they're an alcoholic. They just hit that rock bottom point where they're like, I'm done, it's over. And I hit that. It was freaking hard. It's hard like any addiction, but I just needed to do it. And now I'm sleeping better. My digestion has improved a ton. My blood sugar stabilized and my mind became calmer and clearer. That heart pounding sensation is now gone, and so are my allergies. So if you are on the fence about giving up caffeine, let me break it down for you here. What I learned, what surprised me, and why life without caffeine can be, well, it can be amazing. At first, I didn't think caffeine was a big deal until I researched it. There's a lot of bad stuff that surfaced. It really depends on how you search for information on caffeine, on coffee, on tea, and as to what information you really get. I had read a lot of good things, but when you really take the time to look at the studies and pull out all of the details, caffeine is killing your progress. It's killing your performance and your body in so many different ways. I have found this information to be game-changing, and I know these will make a huge impact on your decision to quit drinking caffeinated beverages altogether. On top of it, let's talk about all the other sneaky areas where caffeine shows up. It shows up in things like supplements. Yeah, supplements, which is super scary. You need to stop and solve this problem for yourself. Caffeine is going to have a negative impact in your life. It's going to make you a lot less happy, and it's going to make you super slow and to take away really a lot of enjoyment in your life. So I suggest you take these 20 minutes or so of your life to listen to this YouTube video as to why you need to stop now too. And if you don't, you will continue down the path you're on, and I don't want you to do that. I really know what I've gone through and how I felt and how game-changing it is, and I believe that you'll thank me later if you really take these really bold steps to stop drinking caffeine. And first and foremost, I want to talk about, I thought caffeine gave me a boost. And I think that's where everyone is really stuck, is because they wake up in the morning and you feel that grogginess, that dread, and as soon as you have a few sips of coffee or tea, you feel like you have that boost, something, that kick in the pants to get going. And I thought that boost made me better. And also it brought me a lot of enjoyment. I actually felt happy having a cup of coffee or a cup of tea, but this was nothing further from the truth at all. Caffeine is a very addictive drug, and that you can get addicted so quickly in a matter of days. Here's how caffeine really works. There are receptors in your brain. These receptors are meant to take these sleepy chemicals called adenosine that tell your brain that you need to be winding down. And when caffeine goes into those receptors in your brain, it releases cortisol, which is a stress hormone, and dopamine. So what does caffeine actually do? So here is you. You're in your nice, happy state. You feel good. You can completely feel good all on your own. Think about when you were a kid. You didn't need coffee or you didn't need tea or any caffeinated beverages to feel good, right? The first time you use caffeine, you feel really happy that first time that you use it. And then you do it the next day, and you do it the next day. And you feel like you are getting a lot of work done. Because dopamine, the chemical that makes you feel like you are getting stuff done, is flooding your brain in excess. And you are like, oh man, I'm getting so much done. And you're able to do 10 different things. I can multitask because this is like my superpower. Not really. How many times have you drank a coffee or a tea and you jump in front of your computer and you've gotten absolutely nothing done? And you've made a bunch of random decisions and you're hopping all over the place, so nothing's actually getting done. You're looking busy, but you're not effective. Or have you ever been there where you just struggled to make a decision? Period. I know that happened to me. I would have a hard time making decisions, and I'm like, why can't I make a decision? What the heck is going on in my head? Like, just make a decision already. And it was all because of caffeine. That's because what happens is that you get this overwhelming flow of happy chemicals, the dopamine combined with cortisol, to get you really ramped up and get you super distracted. And you're going all over the place because you are in that fight or flight mode. And what happens is that these receptors in your brain, they just get plugged up. So they can't take those adenosine sleepy chemicals in. And what happens is that you get this huge increase in alertness because it's locking out the adenosine. It's locking out the sleepiness. And all the other negative things that are happening in your body are artificially being blocked or boosted. So they're just blocking them. These chemicals are not going away. They're just getting built up in your body. The caffeine is just blocking them. So what happens is that you feel happy, but you aren't actually doing anything that would ever make you happy. And what's going to happen is you're going to feel really alert, but you aren't really attentive and focused because you're in that fight or flight mode. Like if a tiger was chasing you or you were running for your life in a dangerous situation. If you look at people who consistently drink caffeinated beverages and those that don't, the people who don't drink caffeine are much more productive overall. I know sometimes it's hard to find people that don't because it seems like everyone is drinking it. Why? It's because they don't have to plan their day when caffeine booms come. And that's what ended up happening to me is I knew between a certain period of time in the day that was when I felt like I was most productive. But I really wasn't. I wasn't getting stuff done. And tasks were piling up. And I was getting so stressed out because I was falling behind. I would think to myself, caffeine makes me more happy, more productive. And it ended up being so false. And what happens is you are drinking caffeine and after a few days, your brain becomes tolerant to it. So even after a few short days of drinking coffee or tea, your brain is like, hey, let's get more of this. And what that means is that your receptors in your brain automatically plug up and change shape to adjust for the caffeine chemicals to accommodate it. Caffeine blocks all of these receptors. And so what happens is your brain makes more receptors to get those chemicals. And what happens is your brain keeps saying, we are blocked, this thing keeps blocking our receptors, and we can't function, so let's just make more receptors. And your brain becomes tolerant to it. So you need to take on more caffeine to keep plugging up these new receptors that are constantly being built. And the second you stop plugging those receptors, that feeling of fatigue, all of the negative stuff comes rushing in like a freight train because it's never gone away. It's just building up in your system. How many times are you coming off a caffeine high and you feel that tiredness like a freight train coming right over you? It's like a light switch. You went from on to off. And that's what happens and why. So what is really happening here is your peak, your caffeine all actually like goes in and it lowers it from the start. So if you're up here, caffeine is taking you just below that. You're still feeling like, yourself, but it's giving you a lower start just from the get-go, from being on it for so long. So you can't function without it. And it lowers you way down much further than you would if you didn't have caffeine at all. So in order to get back up, you need to drink more caffeine. So you keep having these highs and lows, bouncing back and forth, and you really need to keep plugging in the caffeine in order to get back to where you started. However, you would be at a much higher peak if you didn't have caffeine at all. And caffeine will never get you as high as you would without it. So you don't think that at first, because you think it's taking me to a much higher level than I was before. But in reality, it's really not. It's because your body didn't have all of these plugged receptors and all of the damage. So your body's actually functioning correctly. And you don't know it upon starting to drink caffeine because it takes you to another level, but it's that remembering day after day, like, hey, I had that caffeinated beverage, I had coffee, I had that energy drink, I had a cup of tea, and it really gave me such a lift. And then you become addicted to it. And there's so many health effects of caffeine, and yes, they are there and they're real. So whoever tells you that caffeine or coffee and tea, that these substances are healthy, I'm sorry, I don't agree with them whatsoever. Because I have talked to so many people, I have heard from so many people that have had significant health effects from caffeinated beverages. So to me, it's all a bunch of bullshit. They're just covering it up. All you were feeling is this fatigue and all of these negative consequences that your body is feeling. They're still there when you take caffeine away, but they are being blocked by these floods of dopamine. So they are blocking really everything. So everything is really getting blocked off in your brain, and you're feeling it like you are energized for a time. Not because you have energy, it's because you have high cortisol running through your veins. And you're in that fight or flight syndrome, like you were running away from something chasing you to kill you, and that you're going to die. I know that's not true, that that's happening, that you're being chased or you're going to die. But your body responds in the same way. It's the same chemicals that make you feel like if you were really in a really dangerous situation. I know that sounds extreme, but it's real. And cortisol is that fight or flight mechanism. It stresses your body totally out. Your heart rate increases. You start sweating. You start releasing your bowels. It drives your whole body nuts. It gives you this artificial sense that you are moving in the right direction, and really you're not. You are actually performing way less than you should. Caffeine is not actually making you happy either. It's like being a heroin addict. If you took heroin, I'd probably be a lot more happy too if I was taking it than I am now. But that doesn't mean I'm actually fulfilled and happy. No, it's a drug, just like caffeine. What it actually does is it robs you of your happiness because you don't know how to be happy without it. By the time noon rolls around for most of us, those who've had their morning brew are lethargic, tired, and done for the day, unless they have more caffeine. It's not making me feel happy at all. It's making me feel emotions that I would otherwise, until it wears off. And it stops blocking the fatigue and the nasty things in my body and all the tiredness from all of the stress. But those feelings never go away. Those chemicals never go away. So when coffee wears off, you feel terrible because your receptors are no longer blocked and your body starts repairing itself. And that's why you feel terrible, because it's almost like a hangover when you drink too much alcohol and you feel like shit the next day. It's the same thing. So caffeine doesn't make you who you are either. So some people think that they are, getting older, and that's the reason why they're feeling slow and lethargic. That's so not true. It's that we keep drinking coffee and caffeinated beverages, and we are literally putting ourselves in a bad position with our health And it slowly makes us slower and slower and worse over time. And we falsely tell ourselves it's because we are aging, not because we are addicted to a drug that's literally stealing the best from us. And I never believed this for a million years, because I had drank coffee and tea for all my adult years, I think. And I never, if I had only known this information so much earlier, I would have done something about it years ago. And if you knew what I do now, you would be disgusted by caffeine. I'm totally disgusted by it. It's almost like cigarette smokers, like when they quit smoking completely. Do you ever notice like how they can't stand the smell of cigarette smoke and they can't stand to be around it? That's what happened to me with coffee. It was like a mental thing. When I learned how caffeine was destroying my life in so many different ways and how I was feeling like total shit, and I couldn't figure out what the hell was going on in my life because of anxiety and panic and just not feeling well. And I'm thinking, you know, I'm eating all of the right things, I'm doing all the right things, what the heck is going on? And to know that all it was that cup of brew or that tea that I had in the morning, that was the answer. That was like the underlying answer to everything. So if you think of alcohol or you think of drugs, you'd be disgusted by it too, right? You see heroin addicts and their needles, and alcoholics, you see them stumbling all over the place, and it's so gross and just disgusting to you. Well, that's how I'm starting to feel about coffee, because it destroyed so much of my life, so much of my happiness, so much productivity, and my health, that now I have to get it back on track because I feel like I messed up because I was drinking caffeine way too long in my life. It's the same mindset. It's just a different drug. And some people will say caffeine makes me feel like me. That's not true. You're just fucking addicted. The argument for drinking, for drugs, for heroin, that's not tolerated, right? Who the heck tolerates that shit? Yet we tolerate caffeine as an addiction. It's not accepted as a, you know, it's really an acceptable daily habit. It's not something that people look at as a bad one. Most of us drink coffee or some caffeinated beverage every day. And it's allowed us to be, it's really part of our social culture, right? I mean, it's just like alcohol. It's kind of become part of our social culture with going out to dinner and going for a few drinks. And that's tough enough, but coffee has become a real part of our social culture. Ever, you know, drive past the Dunkin' Donuts or the Starbucks in the morning and you see the long line? There you go. And some people are like, I just enjoy the taste. I just enjoy the texture. Does that sound familiar? The real reason everyone says it makes you feel like yourself is because it's a drug. You're allowed to do this every single day and nobody gives you any shit over it because it's a legal drug. If I was drunk 24/7 and I was stumbling around and acting like an idiot, and that's the way people knew me, then yeah, that does make you feel like you, right? You're a drunk. That's who you are most of the time. Then you come down and you feel hungover afterwards. I feel like shit and sleepy and have no energy. It's the same thing. It's the same thing. It's because you are hungover and you have caffeine withdrawals. Then there's those of you who say, I like my organic latte or my French vanilla coffee. It makes me feel happy inside and I love the taste. It's like liquid cocaine, literally. Do you remember when you were a kid and you watched your parents drink coffee? It was like dirt water, right? And you thought, oh, that's so freaking gross. Why are they drinking that shit? And caffeine's not making you happy. And it's not making you who you are. It's a drug. And you're addicted. And when you put on top of all of the negative consequence, on top of all of that, and the negative consequences in your health, it makes your life so much worse. Some will say, it's not that bad for you. I talked to my doctor, he's like, it's not a big deal. This is the biggest crock of crap ever. I suggest you either find a new doctor or you read some literature. There's so much literature out there, so many studies out there, and I'd also suggest maybe reading the book Caffeine Blues. Caffeine is to the industry like cigarettes were to the industry years ago. Everyone was addicted. Food companies, soda companies, they're selling you caffeine every day. It's the same masterminds and the same concept that they used to get people addicted to cigarettes. Actually, it's kind of even more profitable. So the more profitable companies that are doing this, they're selling products with caffeine. They put caffeine in all of their products. Why? It's cheap addiction. They've been putting it into things for many years now. And if you look at a lot of companies, even supplement companies that are out there, they're starting to be picked up by these various food companies. And what do you start to see? You start to see caffeine added to these different supplements that are for women's energy or these green tea extracts. Guess what? It's that sneaky way of getting something addictive into a product. When you can get someone to buy something cheap, like coffee, and get them addicted, they feel pain when they're without it, right? I mean, how do you feel on a day that you don't have coffee available or you don't have tea available? You feel like you're gonna lose your mind, right? It's because it's a huge markup for them. Think about grabbing a cup of coffee at Starbucks or any of those energy drinks that you might pick up while you're out in your day. Things that cost like maybe a nickel to produce, the markup is incredible for these companies. It's instant cash flow for all of these companies because it makes you addicted. And it's a market that's so profitable. It alters all of the statistics and the findings. And if you look at caffeine companies, right, they're a part of all these research boards too, right? It blows my mind. They have all of these research companies, these health companies, while their products don't deliver any nutritional value whatsoever. So why do they have all of these nutritional research companies, you ask yourself, right? It's so they can broadcast research that fits them. This isn't a conspiracy theory, I promise. This is reality. For example, caffeine causes stress in your body and blocks so many of the chemicals in your body that calm you down. And it pumps your body full of chemicals that stress you out and negatively affect your body in so many different types of ways. It's documented. It is, but you need to dig in a little bit differently. And it's really sad that companies run tests like this. It's like biohacking, and that's mostly a scam too. It really is. I mean, don't kid yourself. The way companies are doing studies, you think that there's all these ethical doctors and researchers in white coats and they're doing all of this testing. It's so not true. They are humans like all of us, and they are easily paid off to provide the results that the companies want to see and they want to portray. And if you think about it, if you offered someone 500 grand to say what you want them to say, they'll do it. You would do it. If somebody came up to you and offered you $500,000, you'd do anything they asked you to do. Tell me that they wouldn't do it. Doctors aren't always moral. I'm not saying all doctors are bad, but a lot of them, they're not moral. They're out there making their living like everybody else. And when it comes to who's willing to pay them to not be, there's studies done where they literally gave caffeinated beverages to someone that doesn't drink caffeine at all and asked them about how they felt afterwards. They're not going to have the same results as someone like you that's drinking coffee or drinking tea every day in multiple cups. You're drinking it over longer periods of time and for many years. Are they going to feel the same stress after? Well, they said no. Not accurate. People are out of their minds stressed right now, just in general, right? And on top of it, they have this extra stress that's being put on by caffeine. So when you think about it, does it create digestive issues? Well, no, not in giving it to someone once. They record only the good results. They also may not give them a full caffeine amount either. They also do these comparative studies of giving caffeine to a rat in a lab. They try to piece information together to make it believable. Energy drinks, people think nothing of drinking these every day on top of the coffee that they're drinking. It's literal garbage. And these studies are pushing this garbage out. The negative effects of caffeine are horrifying. When you tell yourself that it's not a big deal, it's healthy, it's just your brain telling yourself that you don't want to deal with the effects of normal life. It's like being an alcoholic and having that drink every night after work because you're trying to get away from all of the negative shit that's going on in your life. It's the same thing. It's just a different drug. You will find every justification because your brain is the best salesperson in the world to take you to your place of comfort. It really is. Your brain is built to take you to the lesser of the evils when it comes to your journey. Your brain isn't going to tell you convincing stuff, especially when it comes to being addicted to something. Your brain isn't going to tell you non-convincing stories. The brain, it avoids pain at all costs. And once you release the two things that you falsely tell yourself, first, that this is what makes me feel like who I am and brings joy in my life, and the second, this is not that bad for me, then you can get better. It's like an alcoholic accepting that they're an alcoholic. Same thing. So, if we look at what it destroys, on top of all of these other health issues, is mental well-being, how your brain thinks, stress, sleep, digestion, inflammation, overall happiness. So when we look at anxiety, here's a definition of anxiety and panic disorder. Overproduction of adrenal stress hormone. Does caffeine do that? It sure does. A second area is decreased nighttime melatonin production. Does caffeine affect melatonin? Yeah, it does. A third area is dysfunction of GABA metabolism. This is what calms you down and allows your body to relax. And it also affects your digestion. Does caffeine mess with that? Yeah, it surely does. Increased firing in the brain? Yes. Decreased circulation in the brain? Yes. Caffeine affects all of that. That's the scientific definition of what anxiety and stress are. It's a literal definition. Caffeine is involved in all of those things, and it pumps it up even worse. And if you're not convinced, it's the way you research anything. Don't go on Google and put caffeine addiction as a broad topic. Go research individual things. If you research anyone talking about the effects of caffeine on anxiety, even if you look on YouTube and you find person after person after person, you'll hear all about them talking about having panic attacks over and over and over. Have you had a panic attack? Or do you even recognize it when it happens because your adrenaline is always so high being on caffeine? I've had them, and they're not fun, all because of caffeine. This is all researched and documented. Every freaking person that talks about caffeine addiction talks about anxiety and the panic. And what happens when this happens is your GABA production is messed up. It's totally messed up. You're not producing melatonin at night, so guess what's going to happen? You're not going to sleep, or you're not going to sleep well. You need those chemicals to sleep. Just like you need those chemicals to feel alert and to feel awake, like you are being chased by a tiger, right? Everything you feel and really everything your body does is regulated by chemicals. So what's going to happen? You're not going to sleep very well. You are going to feel tired all of the time, and you're going to need caffeine to get yourself out of it. Also, you're going to be just not happy unless you're on caffeine as well. So I remember waking up some mornings and wondering, how the heck am I going to get through the day because I didn't sleep? On top of that, all of these chemicals that are being released, all of these negative consequences, they are all building up in time in my body. So if you get off caffeine for a few days, it's not like it reduces and it goes back down to 0 at nighttime. So you'll read all the time on Google that it says caffeine has a half-life of 5 hours. Well, if you've been drinking caffeine for a long, long time and a lot of it, that's not freaking true. By the way, if you drink 500 milligrams of caffeine, which is pretty much everyone these days, it doesn't get out of your system for days. And even after that, all these chemicals and hormones that have been released, they don't instantly leave the party, and it doesn't instantly calm down. You can go on a week-long vacation and pick up the same habit again. All that stress and everything comes right back flooding, right? Like faster than it went out. And when you're on caffeine, you are revved up anyway, and your adrenal glands are producing cortisol like crazy and becoming dysfunctional. So you will get bursts of energy at weird times of the night sometimes when you don't want them. You'll have these crashes, these ups and downs. You end up planning your whole entire day around your caffeine addiction. This is going to give you natural anxiety around people as well. If you notice people who drink caffeine a lot they're kind of finicky people. They have social anxiety and they have anxiety of being triggered and all of that stuff, and they're just kind of interesting to be around. So it's not that great for your brain, it's not that great for your sleep, and your brain doesn't even work right even in social environments to be out and about because you're just screwed up. And if you remove all of the artificial stuff that's being created and reveal all the real stuff you're putting in, a holding pattern, your sleep starts decreasing and you're feeling anxious all of the time, you're not going to get high quality work done and become even less efficient over time. And boom, you just went from being at 90% to maybe being about 70%, and that's with caffeine. And it all starts to build up over time. You are not getting deep sleep, that restorative sleep that cleanses your brain, that really helps your body to heal. You're not going into those deep sleep modes, and your adrenal glands can't rest. And they are just on fire all the time until you stop drinking caffeine. And it all builds up over time to a point that you're just shot. You just feel like you're freaking shot. You feel like crap all the time, no matter what else you do. And it is the cause and the culprit. Digestion is a huge factor. It was a huge factor for me and was one of the most important things. You are who you are based on what you eat, what you consume, and the ability to absorb nutrition. So there's a long laundry list of things that caffeine does to the body, like IBS and giving you ulcers. Also, when your body is stressed, it gives you anxiety. Your body is not able to fight off bacteria as well, so you get H. pylori in your gut. All documented. These are all documented in studies. They're all proven. Go find a person talking about caffeine digestion, and you'll see all of the studies justifying this. If you find any worthwhile keto or carnivore channels that are actually being honest with you about caffeine, or any gut health experts, they're going to tell you this. It's common knowledge. If you look up studies in Google is going to show you studies that show there's no findings or nothing really, anything to worry about. Yeah, if you drink coffee for 2 days in a row, it's not going to mess up your entire stomach. If you drink it for a year or more straight, like the caffeine companies are trying to get you to do, yeah, you'll have some big problems. If you talk to people drinking it for years, their stomachs are completely messed up. I was one of those people. If you are getting tired all of the time after you eat, if you have all of these allergies that you feel like are increasing, like allergies that are popping up, and you think, wow, I haven't had allergies like that since I was a kid or for years or maybe ever, it's the coffee. It's well documented. On the allergy front, coffee is known to have mold toxins, and mold can do a lot of damage, especially if you're allergic to it. So that's pretty scary. Caffeine also increases blood pressure. Coffee causes you to dump all your iron. It decreases your ability to hold onto iron and to absorb it. And that's so important for health. Caffeine can actually prevent your body from absorbing important nutrients like iron, calcium, and some B vitamins. So if you're loading up on healthy foods, but you're downing those cups of coffee or tea in the morning, your body might not be really getting the good stuff that you're feeding it. It causes you not to get nutrients you should. And it also causes you to get premature gray hair at a much younger age and a faster rate. So when your body is having stress response and your adrenals are completely overworked, you lack an immune response. So you get H. pylori in your stomach that causes IBS, causes all the nasty things that happen in your stomach, causes that diarrhea that you get, right? And when you're under the effects of caffeine, it causes things in your digestive tract to release early, sending your food through the pathway without being fully digested before depleting in nutrients. So if you want to be a top performer, do you think you're going to be if you're not absorbing your vitamins and minerals that you need to think and to live and to feel healthy? No, you're not. It literally loosens the tightness of the valves in the top of your stomach, giving you acid reflux, and also in your colon. So caffeine, especially on an empty stomach, so hello intermittent fasters, this is going to strip the lining of your stomach, which stops, and it basically stops and prevents the stomach from creating more acid. So it causes all sorts of stuff, including leaky gut syndrome. So food isn't getting absorbed in your stomach and it starts leaking out into the rest of your body. Think about how that sounds. It's disgusting. This is why you get sick, and this is why when you eat food, you feel terrible, or you feel bloated, or you feel like your body is carrying all this extra water weight. It's the caffeine. Maybe your rings are tight, your body feels soft, right? Your body isn't able to produce the acid it needs to digest the food properly. So what happens when you drink coffee? It overstimulates the acid production, where your stomach ends up stopping producing acid because it feels like there's plenty and it stops doing it on its own. So you're not digesting your food properly. And if you think caffeine helps weight loss, this is the biggest lie too. Just another research tidbit. So caffeine companies broadcast that they have a bunch of research studies that it helps with weight loss. It actually doesn't. It produces and metabolizes fat in a way that it puts it into this state that's meant to be burnt. So it's not really in a fat substance anymore in the body, but it's still there. And as soon as you get off caffeine, your body is no longer your body's no longer in this fight or flight pattern. It stores this back as fat again. So it goes right back to where it is. So it never really goes anywhere. It just kind of changes shape and form, but it ends up going right back on you. So you don't actually lose the weight. That's another false one. And the list can go on and on with digestive issues. It messes up your GABA, which is the chemical that's in charge of making your digestive tract normal. And that's why, things go so abnormal when you start going to the bathroom all the time and when you're on caffeine, right? It's hard on your kidneys as well. And you've taken, a perfectly run system, and now it's shooting off randomly all over the place within your digestive tract, making all kinds of noises and making you just feel terrible. Caffeine is affecting chemicals in your digestion from working properly like they should. And now they're working at different rates of time, creating a total disaster. And that's why when you have your first cup of coffee in the morning, you probably have to go to the bathroom right away. You have to go to the bathroom continuously because you're being dehydrated. It's basically stripping all the hydration out of your body. And it's just a total disaster. And if your digestion is not right, you're not going to be a top performer. You'll have depression because you feel terrible. I mean, when your stomach hurts, when you're not digesting food properly, you're not getting the right nutrients, you're not sleeping at night, you feel like shit. And you're just not getting the right nutrition. So everything is going to be off. And if you're worried about being a top performer and you think you need caffeine to be a top performer, you're fooling yourself. You're just an addict. You're not performing well anyways. You are like a heroin addict that's screaming for the first hour after they get their shot, and then they fall apart and droop around like crazy when their high is gone. It's just freaking gross. It's like watching a total addict. And you're going through the same thing, but you don't see yourself that way. And finally, when it comes down to your overall happiness, your brain thinks in pain or no pain. How your brain works is that when it sees dopamine and an option of nothing when it comes to pain, it'll say, chase that dopamine and do more of that. I want that. And what happens is that your brain is overridden with dopamine. It's going to go for the easiest source of dopamine, and you become dopamine desensitized. The amount of dopamine that is released between caffeine, drugs, TV, social media scrolling, it's unnatural dopamine. And as you experience high amounts of dopamine that's unnatural and way higher than normal, you start to become desensitized to it. So what does this mean? Excuse me. It means that things that should make you happy don't make you happy anymore. For instance, when you go to your computer every morning without caffeine, you don't feel happy anymore because your brain has become desensitized. You're generating dopamine, but your brain is using it at max level dopamine. So it's taking you to a 10 every time, where maybe your normal should be 5. And reading a book or working out becomes less enjoyable. Everything really becomes less enjoyable, unless you're high on caffeine. Doing just about anything will have less joy. Working past noon without caffeine after having it earlier in the day makes you feel useless, unless you have more and you keep giving yourself that drug. So by drinking caffeine, you are basically saying to yourself, no, don't enjoy the world. Just enjoy this chemical that I've smashed into my brain and have blocked all my receptors. What your body is going to do is to move toward the easiest path. Instead of your brain going to work, it's going to say, nope, let's get high first. Caffeine lowers the ability to enjoy life overall. At least it did for me. And these are only some of the common things that happen. If you investigate any of these specific issues, others will tell you the same. People will say, I was depressed and I stopped drinking coffee and it was fixed. I had digestive issues and I had leaky gut and I stopped drinking caffeine and it was fixed. You also have people that, I wasn't sleeping at night. I thought that I had menopause or I was in perimenopause and my hormones were off. They stopped drinking coffee and guess what? They can sleep again. If you're high on caffeine, you are not factually the best version of yourself. There's no way that you can say you were blocking receptors in your brain, overloading your body with cortisol, messing up the chemicals in your digestion and your sleep, and that you're doing pretty good. Think about it. That's bullshit, right? If you are saying it's good for me, I enjoy it. Yeah, if I was a heroin addict, I guess I would enjoy that too, right? And when doctors say that it's not that bad for you, it really is. They're just lying to your face. And they're lying to themselves as well because they're addicted too. So caffeine takes you away from what your body actually wants to do, which is rest, heal your adrenals from stress, heal your gut, and try to get your body to homeostasis. So when you look at the research and you dig around on all the facts that are emitted and all of the stuff that's covered up, it's really astonishing. It's destroying people. Don't let yourself lie to yourself. I mean, you're basically lying to yourself if you believe all of this crap. Take the time to research it if you don't believe me, but the research is there from so many people and so many good researchers that really share data that's true. If you were thinking about quitting caffeine and you don't know how, the real reason I stopped it, it was not healthy for me. It was not making me a top performer. It was causing me stress and anxiety, and I couldn't sleep well, which affected all parts of my life and health. This is counteractive to the person that I really want to be in my life. I want to be a peak performer. And by drinking caffeine, it was destroying all of that. So I needed to stop cold turkey. This is not like some 12-step program. So I'm sorry I don't have this step-by-step way of coming off caffeine. I want to be a top performer. I want to get a lot done. I want to be healthy. I don't want to be planning my work around caffeine and feel like crap all the time. I want to sleep and I want to get good nutrition and I just want to be at my best. I want to look my best. I want to feel my best. I want to be at my best for my family, my loved ones, and my work and my business. And I want to get the most out of life. So if you've made it this far, then I know that this story hits home to you. Caffeine is a real addiction. Stop downplaying it. If you want to be a better version of yourself, stop right now. Stop today. I guarantee you will feel like shit for days when you do. When you stop cold turkey, you're going to feel like shit. Symptoms can include headaches, irritability, fatigue, muscle pain, and even flu-like symptoms. You're going to feel like you're totally have COVID. Since caffeine's withdrawal is now so recognized of a condition, these symptoms can feel very similar to other forms of addiction, and they're starting to be treated that way, making it a real challenge for many to cut out caffeine cold turkey. So some might suggest to, take steps to lower the caffeine. I never found it to work. I just needed to cut it out. And it might take you weeks to get back on track, but what I will tell you is this. Every day you will feel a little bit better. I know that's hard to believe because when your first 2 days, you're going to feel totally like crap, like you got a bus run over you. And once you get this drug out of your system after a few weeks, you will feel so good that you will never go back. It's hard. I'm not downplaying how hard this is. It's really hard to quit. You need to decide though. You need to decide what's more important in your life, your addiction or being the best version of yourself. So share your story in the comments or any experiences that you have had beating this addiction. Don't feel bad if you keep trying and failing. It's like any other addiction. It's not easy. The most important thing is that you keep trying. Eventually you will be strong enough to hang in there until it's totally out of your system for good. And you'll find success. If you found this content valuable, please consider subscribing, and we'll see you all in the next video.